Imagine a quiet Boston afternoon shattered by an unimaginable wave, not of water, but of thick, sticky molasses rushing through the streets. It sounds unbelievable, but in 1919, this bizarre disaster became reality, leaving destruction and a lasting impact on the city and its people. In the early 20th century, Boston was a bustling hub of industrial activity, poised on the brink of modernization, yet bound by the constraints of its aging infrastructure and a glaring lack of regulatory oversight. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919 serves as a stark reminder of this era's unique blend of progress and peril. The event occurred in Boston's North End, a densely populated neighborhood marked by narrow streets and closely packed tenement buildings. A vivid representation of Boston's historical charm but also its vulnerabilities. But how did such an unusual disaster come about? The disaster was triggered by the catastrophic failure of a giant molasses storage tank owned by the Purity Distilling Company. Constructed in 1915, this 50-foot-tall, 90-foot diameter steel vessel was hastily built to meet wartime demand for industrial alcohol, which was a key ingredient in making explosives during World War I. The tank was massive. It could hold over 2.3 million gallons of molasses. However, the rush to build it, combined with inadequate safety standards of the time, made it a ticking time bomb. Let's set the stage. Early 20th century Boston was a rapidly growing city. New industries, old infrastructure, and a lack of modern safety regulations were all mixed together. The city was expanding, but its buildings, roads, and public services weren't keeping up. This disaster wasn't just a freak accident, it was a combination of poor engineering, ignored warnings, and a lack of accountability, emblematic of many industrial challenges of the time. In the years leading up to the disaster, residents of the North End reported hearing strange groaning noises from the tank, and often noticed molasses leaking from its seams. Incredibly, the shotgun hahan. The company painted the tank brown to hide these leaks instead of addressing the structural issues. Many had long feared that the tank would eventually burst, but these warnings were ignored. The lack of regulatory oversight meant there were few standards in place to ensure the tank's safety. On January 15, 1919, the disaster struck. It was an unusually warm day for winter, around 40 degrees after days of freezing temperatures. At around 12:30 p.m., the molasses tank ruptured, unleashing a tsunami of thick, viscous syrup. The 2.3 million gallons of molasses surged through the narrow streets of Boston's North End at an estimated 30 miles per hour. Witnesses described the noise as something between a thunderclap and a machine gun going off, followed by the terrifying sight of a 35-foot-high wave of molasses sweeping everything in its path. The force of the wave was so powerful that it demolished buildings, crushed vehicles, and tore steel girders from the city's elevated train tracks. Homes and businesses were swept away, and horses were trapped and drowned in the sticky flood. The molasses was so dense that even trying to wade through it was nearly impossible. Victims were pulled under and suffocated by the weight and thickness of the syrup. In total, 21 people lost their lives, and around 150 others were injured in the immediate aftermath. The cleanup effort was slow, arduous, and like the disaster itself, surreal. The streets of Boston were covered in molasses for weeks. Cleanup crews, consisting of city workers, soldiers, and even volunteers, worked day and night to remove the sticky residue. They used everything from salt water to sand to wash the molasses away, but it was everywhere. Boston Harbor itself was stained brown for months, and residents claimed they could still smell molasses in the air for years afterward. But the cleanup was only one part of the story. The legal and social aftermath of the flood would leave an even bigger mark on Boston and the nation. Almost immediately after the disaster, lawsuits were filed against the Purity Distilling Company and its parent company, the United States Industrial Alcohol Company. The legal battle that followed became one of the first major cases of corporate negligence in U.S. history. During the court proceedings, evidence of the tank's faulty construction and poor maintenance came to light. It was revealed that the company had rushed the tank's construction to meet wartime demands, cutting corners and failing to properly test the tank for safety. Furthermore, the court learned that the tank's steel walls were too thin and that no safety tests had ever been conducted. Witnesses testified about the strange noises and leaking molasses that had been ignored for years. The court ultimately ruled in favor of the victims, holding the United States Industrial Alcohol Company liable for the disaster. The company was ordered to pay over $600,000 in damages, a significant sum for the time. But more importantly, the case set a precedent for corporate responsibility and paved the way for stricter building codes and safety regulations in industrial processes across the country. The Great Molasses Flood became a turning point in how cities approached industrial safety, and it highlighted the dangers of unchecked corporate power and insufficient regulatory oversight. It also spurred advancements in engineering standards, leading to more thorough inspections and testing protocols for industrial facilities. Today, the Great Molasses Flood of 1919 stands as a bizarre yet poignant reminder of the risks associated with rapid industrial development. It serves as a cautionary tale about the balance between progress and public safety. While Boston has long since rebuilt, and the flood is now a distant memory, its lessons remain relevant. In fact, the disaster helped shape the modern regulatory environment we live in today. The event also lingers in Boston's cultural memory. The site of the flood, located in the North End, now features a small plaque commemorating the disaster. And Bostonians continue to tell the story of the Molasses tsunami to this day. This strange and tragic event has also gained new attention in recent years, with historians, writers, and filmmakers exploring its legacy. It's often cited as one of the strangest disasters in American history, and yet, beneath its surreal surface lies a powerful message about accountability, engineering, memory, and the need for constant vigilance in the face of growing industrial demands. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919 was more than just a bizarre accident. It was a tragedy born from negligence, poor planning, and a disregard for safety. But from that disaster came progress, as it forced industries to take safety seriously. And today, over 100 years later, the sticky memories of that event remind us of the importance of putting people before profit. And with that, if you found this story fascinating, be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into history's strangest moments. Thank you for watching.